And let's build this premise. The only wrong question is the unasked question. So let's begin with your questions. Yes, sir.
If you had to sum it up, what's the state compared to what we have now, most of the systems compared to what you had? What does it say? What are you rescuing?
That's a very pertinent question. I would call it the human condition. One of the concerns that lies behind my dialogic approach to education is how do we humanize university education? How do we personalize learning? How do we individualize what is called in educational circles cognitive acquisition? That's the fancy name for learning. So for me, what lies behind this is how do we learn and how do we learn better? And I should tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Anonymity did this film. When in 2007, she said she wanted to make the film, I said, fine, as long as, in keeping with my dialogic philosophy of education, that the individual remains, quote, uncensored, unedited, and unplugged, end of quote. Go ahead and make it. I don't want to see any outtake during the shoot. I will not look at the final cut. I will not see the film until the public at large does. So that the world premiere, I didn't even know the title. It's entirely the work of Alanis Obomsawin. And I believe part of that is learning to trust others. Building trust in the academy. Building trust between you and I. As a religious studies scholar, I'm informed, for example, by the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber, and the I and thou relationship. I believe at the end of the day, all learning comes down to you and I. Other questions, comments? And you can come up with a rejoinder later. We'll just try and do the tour of the room. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I'm just wondering, as you said, about your different life right now, going around the world to a certain extent, meeting many interesting people. Could that be part of the silver lining to this?
That's a good question. However, unbeknownst to me, Anonymity Obomsawin had contacted our family. I had no idea that the children they're all adults now, of course. I had no idea that she had contacted the children. I had except where you see my wife and I together, I had no idea of how she was making this film. And I want to be very honest with you. The price was not just mine. My wife, our children. Heavy duty. So, I welcome such opportunities to come here, but I never forget the cost. Yes?
Yes. I noticed early on in the film you allowed people to choose their own name instead of calling by their own. I was just wondering, was it a method of veiling their identity so that you would probably eliminate the intimidation when speaking to someone who has PhD, for example, and try and really reach that subjective view? I look at this and I see something like with an anonymity on the internet. You don't have your name, you don't have your full name, you're just speaking as an anonymous person with one in the crowd. And we see a lot of subjectivity, we just see people going all out explaining their views, even if it's highly inflammatory, highly contradictory. So I'm just wondering if it needs somewhere in your classroom.
That's a good question. First of all, as the Rolling Stones would say, you're not the only one with mixed emotions. Anonymity is a two-way street. When the Right Honorable Paul Martin, the Prime Minister, came as our dialogue partner, do you know, the students had no idea he was coming. Second of all, they never realized that they had been reading, studying, writing, and reflecting on Paul Martin. And why is that? But what I would do is I would photocopy essays or articles that he had authored, and he and I worked this all out in advance. And I removed the title of the author, I removed the name of the publication, all the pages. The only reference they had were the words themselves, because I believe ideas have to stand on their own. Now imagine you're a 21-year-old, and you know that you're reading the Prime Minister of Canada. Oh, what can I say to the Right Honourable Paul Martin? But if you don't know, and I have to tell you, 2 days after that dialogic session, I received a phone call in my office from Ottawa, and there was this lady, very officially, saying, "This is the office of the Prime Minister, and we would like to see, he's on the line, he would like to speak with you." And I said, "Oh no, what did I do?" And he told me, he said, "Professor Cornett, unfortunately, my schedule does not allow me to visit the campuses that I would like to. In fact, now I can only do the graduate seminars. It's come down to that. But I have to tell you that this was the most exhilarating university experience I have ever had." Because he knew he was hearing honest answers. And if anybody knows about political correctness, it's a politician. Other questions, comments? Please, folks. Let's make the most of the moment. Yes?
How did you grade students with what you're
Well, yeah, that's a practical question and a logistic one. Now, as you see in Anonymity film there, and I didn't know who she was interviewing, I know none of this. They say, well, we heard that it was a bird course, that it was an automatic A, but no, it was not worth it. And the first thing that we do in our, I call them learning communities, not classes, and I don't refer to them as students, I call them learners. We're all fellow learners. We're just on different paths of the journey. And so I was very upfront with them from the get-go. This is the university version of Survivor. Because, you know why? Do you think you can invite the Prime Minister of Canada in and not have done your homework? Do you think you can invite the Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada into your classroom and you don't come to the table well prepared? Can you invite Grammy Award-winning musicians, composers, or actors? Ethan Hawke is one of my dialogue partners. It was a fascinating experience, incidentally. Well, so in the course, first of all, you worked so hard every time we were in, but in an enjoyable way, as you hear them saying. Second of all, you had readings outside and reflections outside. Now, technology has changed the university classroom. Over the course of the 15 years at that institution, I happened to notice the impact of cell phones and then text messages. And you began to realize that people could be in your classroom and spend their entire time just texting or doing something else. If the cell phone went off in the classroom, automatic 5% off the grade. And it was written in the syllabus. Each absent, automatic 5. So we really encourage creativity, but that is not to the detriment of discipline. Because discipline and creativity go hand in hand. No matter which artist I would invite, I can tell you, how did they get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, 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 as Fritz Kreisler said. Or, in another rock terminology, nobody gets to the top without blood, sweat, and tears. There is no such thing as, don't strike me dead here, but the idea of divine inspiration, and suddenly I got the idea and I create art. I work a lot with art.